Welcome to the Source of Commercial Real Estate, where we discuss all things non-residential commercial real estate, including finding and funding deals, seeking opportunities, and discovering your competitive advantage. I am your host, Jonathan Hayek, and today I am talking with Esther Reizes-Lowenbein. Esther, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Esther, why don't we start out with you telling us about your background and what your work in real estate looks like today?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on. My professional background started as a speech language pathologist, actually. I graduated my master's degree in 2007, I think it was, right before I had my second child. And I worked in that field for about 10 years. I really enjoyed it, but for several reasons, I decided to pivot into real estate. Totally two different fields. People can't understand it, neither can I, but it happened. Got into real estate, started initially as a broker where I live on the residential side, quickly pivoted into commercial, realized that that's my space. Got involved in brokering some deals. Some of them I'm still waiting to get paid for. Different story. Got involved, and then I had one client that had asked me to help him find equity for a specific deal. And I was able to find him an equity partner within 2 phone calls. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That was easy, pretty effortless. So I said, why don't I do more of that? So I started looking into raising equity. And again, at that time, I knew nothing about raising equity. So I ended up giving back that money from that deal. So even though I did a lot of deals, I didn't get paid for all of it. But I have transacted a lot, and I still take credit for it, and still count those numbers, even though I didn't actually get paid for them. But I started raising equity and started connecting a lot of people and starting growing my network of individuals. Before I got involved in real estate, I knew nobody with money. My friends and family do not have money. So it was all like sort of self-built, so to say. Obviously with God's help, and a lot of hard work. I amassed a large network of people and started connecting people, and I enjoy meeting people and networking and connecting. So I figured this is my space. I shine here, and that's sort of where I landed in the last 3 years. Just connecting equity. Obviously in the last few months, it's been a little tough with the market shift, but still trying, still working.
So Esther, that's a great story. A side note question: when you were a speech and language pathologist, were you working in a school setting? Were you in the hospital setting, private practice? What were you doing?
I was working in a school setting and in a clinic. I did both, mostly in one school. So I was on that more on the educational side, but I did work in a clinic with more severe cases.
Nice.
No hospitals.
I'm a former special ed teacher, and so I worked with a lot of speech pathologists and have a ton of respect for you. You have a really hard job, often huge caseloads.
Yes.
So it's just an awesome profession. Good for you for sticking it out for 10 years.
Likewise.
Esther, yeah. When I was researching for this podcast, I came to your episode on bigger pockets, and I remember listening to it. It was probably 2 years ago or so, and after I saw that you were on bigger pockets, that reminded me of that. I remember what I was doing when I was listening to that episode. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts and feedback about your experience going on the OG Bigger Pockets podcast. How did you land that? And what has it done for your career?
I don't think anyone's asked me. Actually, maybe one person's asked me how I landed there. I was at the Bigger Pockets event in New Orleans. It was 2 years ago. I didn't go last year, so it was the year before, I believe. I'm losing track of time. But I was at the live event in New Orleans, and they had a charity bid. And I thought I was bidding for something totally different, but I bid for this thing. And they're like, okay, you're about to go live. I'm like, what live? We're live. Like I bid for something. And then they're like, okay, we're getting you mic'd up. I said, one sec, what's going on? They're like, you're going live on stage with all the big people. Brandon Turner was there, David Green, the CEO, Tony Robinson, several others. I'm like, hold on. I just need to go to the restroom for a second. Like, give me a second. I had no idea what was happening. So I ran to the restroom. They were already all on stage. I came on last. They got me mic'd up and just started connecting. And Brandon was like, wow, we got to have you on the podcast. So I was like, sure, no problem. But I had scheduled the podcast, and one of the organizers' wife had a baby. Basically, his wife had a baby, and that was the week that Brandon had left. So I had just missed Brandon. So Brandon owes me one. I mean, I had an interview with David Green and Henry Washington. They're awesome. But it was Brandon's idea to get me on, and he had just left literally that week. So I know that Brandon has a podcast now, so I'm expecting an invite.
That's a really great story. So you go on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and did all of your channels blow up? Did you get tons of connection requests, or what happened as a result of that?
It's actually interesting. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback. Most of the people that are listening to these podcasts, I believe, are newer investors or people that are learning. They're not necessarily seasoned investors. That was the feeling I got from it. I got tons of amazing feedback. And people that want to get in and want to start learning and want to be mentored. It's more like, I feel like it's more of a beginner's, the experienced real estate investors are no longer listening. They're maybe on the next level. So that's what I felt like initially. I did get a lot of people recognize that I was on it, and they just let me know that I was on it. But in terms of profitability or, to monetize on it, it was more of the newer investors that I felt that I had reached. But, you never know. I always say, people ask me, you go to so many events, which one's the best, which podcast to go on. I say, do as much as you can, get to as many places as you can. You never know where the connection you need is going to land from. So you don't know where it's going to come from. So get out there as much as possible. Even if you're reaching, it doesn't matter. And, even if I can inspire somebody just starting out, I'm so happy to do that. I'm so happy to be an inspiration in the small sense to anyone getting out there. And I'm happy to answer any questions or help wherever I can.
That's such good advice. Thank you for sharing that. So let's get into what you are active in now. You are active in raising capital, raising equity for lots of deals. I know you've got a lot going on. So give me a big picture, 30,000 foot view. What does your business look like today? What do you spend your time on?
Talking about Bigger Pockets, they titled my episode "Raising Money and Raising Kids." So that's a synopsis of what it was their credit. I use that tagline now, raising money and raising kids. So that's what I do. That's what my life looks like right now. Some days one's harder than the other. Right now, raising equity is really, really tough. So I'm trying to focus more on raising my kids. So I've started my own private equity fund once I started learning all about equity and studying all the laws and speaking to many SEC attorneys. I started a private equity fund. It's more of a deal by deal situation. I syndicated 2 deals, both that are not cash flowing right now due to the market. Yep, we do. And then I also connect co-GPs and JVs. So I connect people that are looking, let's say someone's buying an office building and they're looking for a $5 million check. I'll find them one individual that's going to partner up with them as a general partner. And I just make the connection. I like connecting people, so I just make the connection. The investor that's going to come in as a general partner with equal decision-making abilities and have equal rights and equal say in the deal, they're going to come in and they're going to underwrite the deal. They're going to do all the research regardless. I'm just making the initial connection. So I act as a equity matchmaker, besides for syndicating through my fund.
Okay. So it sounds like there's kind of two buckets that you find yourself in. One is this equity matchmaker, where you've got a GP looking for money, high net worth people, and you connect them together, and I assume take some sort of fee for making that connection. But then you also have a fund in which you partner directly with GPs and operators. Can you explain the fund part of it?
Yeah, so I've done 2 deals that I syndicated. One of them was where I'm a co-GP on the deal. So besides for raising, I have other roles on the deal. And then I syndicated it. I brought in, equity, and I have some other roles on the deal. That's one deal. And another deal, I came in as a fund of funds into a deal. So I've done it both ways. That way. And those are multifamily units in Texas. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what makes the most sense to you? It seems like just being a connector and then sort of backing away is like the low maintenance way of doing it. Like you make the connection, you take a fee, and then you're out of it. Whereas when you're fund of funds and you're on the GP side, you're in it for the long haul, which probably results in longer term gain and more upside, but also more risk and more headache. And if you're raising a lot of kids and you have a lot going on, that could be challenging. So what kind of model makes the most sense to you?
That's a good question. There's no answer really. I mean, the deal that I syndicated right now is in cash flowing due to the market. They took out a floating rate. The lead sponsor, he was involved in the debt. There's a floating rate out on it, so it's not producing much right now. All the cash flow is being eaten by the debt. So right now, am I happy that I went into that deal? It's not exciting. Do I regret it? I try not to regret what I do. The guy that I partnered with is a great guy. I really have faith in him. So I don't regret partnering with a good operator. I still believe in him and, still hold highly of him. I try not to live with regret, but now I'm kind of careful not to syndicate deals because of the market. I'm kind of afraid to take responsibility for investors' money. I hold investors' money just as high as I hold my own. So unless there's a phenomenal deal out there with a phenomenal sponsor, I'm being very, very cautious about bringing in limited partners into deals right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you, along with lots of other operators and syndicators, are learning some important lessons right now, and we'll see how it plays out over the next couple years. So let's talk about the operators that you work with. When you're playing matchmaker, what does an operator have to do to get your attention? Someone has a self-storage facility and they need to do that $5 million raise. Are you connecting with people on LinkedIn? Are these long-time personal relationships? Are these conference relationships? How can an operator get your attention to get you to, work your magic in your network to make a strategic connection for them?
Yes, I tell people now that in order for me to I have so many people reaching out to me. There's so many people in need of equity. So I tell them as long as they're, number one, under contract on a deal, and number two, they have to be willing to bring on a co-GP or a JV partner. So not a limited partner. We're only connecting general partners together. So that avoids a lot of security issues because they both have decision-making abilities. They're both equal partners on the deal. So as long as they're under contract and they're willing to bring on a co-GP, JV partner, then I can continue talking to them. And then I always tell people then that I can try. Right now the market's really tough, hoping it eases. But during this recording, the market's tough. There are very few investors putting money into putting equity into real estate right now unless they have people that they've worked with before and they really know. But the transaction volume is much slower than it was just several months ago. So I tell people that all I can do is try. I don't take exclusivity. I don't promise anything. I can try, and I'm working really hard to try to help these sponsors, but it's tough. It's really rough out there. And who do I raise money from?
Let's
Everyone.
talk about
everyone. I raise money from, high net worth individuals, family offices, people I met at conferences, online. I cannot keep up with my emails, my messages, my social media presence. I can't keep up. Thank God. It's a good problem, but it's a lot.
Let's talk about that difficult market that we find ourselves in. It is hard to raise money. People are weary of the real estate market. They're weary of the aforementioned floating debt that's out there, and what's going to happen with bridge loans and all that kind of stuff. So in your conversations with potential investors, I imagine there are some people that are looking to place money. What are some of the key questions that they're asking? Are there certain deals that are more of a sure thing to get funded? What are people looking to plant money? What's attractive to them right now?
That's a good question. So obviously, number one, they're looking at the debt. People are suddenly asking questions that they haven't asked before, including myself, right? We're more aware of what's happening nowadays than, we're more in tune and more we're able to ask better questions than we were before. Sometimes it's all about experiences and learning, life. We live and learn. What are investors looking for? That's a good question. So I work with so many investors in all different assets, locations, and different price tags. So each one's looking for something else. We're seeing a lot of people willing to place like pref equity right now versus common equity. A lot of people are going into more like rescue capital situations where a lot of people that have money that are looking to place, they're looking for opportunities. So it's not necessarily a specific asset or location. They're more looking for a good opportunity and how to make nice return on their investments. So whether it's a deal in Brooklyn that's a vacant multifamily that I'm working on right now, or a self-storage somewhere, it doesn't matter. They're looking for the IRR. They're looking for the multiple, the equity multiple. They're looking to see if the sponsor is a good operator, has the experience. So I see people now looking just for opportunity, not necessarily in anything specific.
So you touched on people are looking for pref equity versus common equity. Can you explain the difference?
Yes. So we have the bank, which is the debt, and then investors have to come in with equity. So there's sometimes the investors will offer a preferred return where those preferred equity investors get their money before the common equity investors. What happens in such a downturn, when we're seeing such a situation, the common equity providers are the first ones to get burnt. They're the last ones to get paid and the first ones to get burnt. So a lot of people recognize this right now and are going into the preferred equity position where they get paid right after the bank. So we're seeing a lot of that right now. And actually I had this idea way before tons of people started getting into this fund, and I was supposed to get involved in a fund. That didn't happen, but I saw this coming, and now it's the case that a lot of people are coming in as a pref provider versus common. They want less risk. They want less risk in their investment, and they're willing to get less returns for lower risk.
I see. So are you seeing operators offer higher prefs right now? So it used to be, 7% pref, 70-30 split. Are you seeing prefs go any higher or not really right now?
I see everything. Like I saw a deal that offered a 10% preferred return, but that's like rare. I'm not necessarily am I seeing things higher, no, because very few deals are making sense these days. If the rates are so high and the prices are still so high, the sellers haven't gotten the memo to lower their prices. A lot of them don't want to because they're going to lose money. So you're not seeing opportunities that make so much sense. So no, you're not seeing higher numbers. No, not in general. Here and there, yes.
Think about the sponsors that you've worked with that investors have been really happy with, either in your syndication deals or in making the connections. Think about those sponsors that investors say, "Hey, when this person has another deal, let me know. I wanna get in another deal with this sponsor." What sets apart the great sponsors from the ones that are just so? What makes a sponsor successful in your mind?
So someone that's, first of all, trustworthy, they have good character. That's something that I look for right away. As a mother, we have a good sixth sense. So that's the first thing I do is, try to sort of feel out the person and see if they're a good person. That's number one. I like to work with good people. Number two, obviously they have to care about their investors just as much as they care about themselves. Number two, we want to see how much experience they have. Have they gone through a full cycle? Do they know what they're doing? Have they gone through a full cycle of a similar asset in a similar location? If yes, and they've been successful and they've had happy investors, that makes a great sponsor. Obviously, they have to have boots on the ground and they have to have the structure set up and the appropriate partners and a good team to help them execute their plan.
Esther, let's get into the stuff that I know listeners are dying to hear about. So, connecting with high net worth individuals. There are so many operators and investors out there that are like, how can I get in touch with these people looking to place tons of money? So think back to your early days of connecting people. You're a speech and language pathologist. You have no high net worth connections, but you find yourself in this place where you find that you're actually good at it. So tell me about those first couple deals and how did you go about connecting with high net worth individuals?
So like I said, I was totally new. I knew nobody with money. Nobody in my circle has money still. Like close friends and family. I mean, I became friends with more people since, but at that point, nobody. So I started, as soon as I realized I have a knack at connecting and I have a passion for real estate, I started going to every single event that I can get to. And I started going to every course I can go to. And I started listening to every podcast I could. Once I committed to learning and growing and meeting, I was full force all at once. And this is with raising 8 children at once. So I'm doing this all together. And if I can do it, so can anyone. It's just a matter of getting out there, learning, meeting, going, just letting people know what you're doing, grow your social media presence. It obviously in a very natural, non-flamboyant process. But just let people know in a very nice way what you're up to. Keep posting, post content. Another thing I would do is right when I got started, as soon as I started learning something, I started writing about it. And I also started interviewing a lot of professionals in the field, and I would write for a magazine. So I started doing that initially. So I got to know a lot of people. I established a rapport with a lot of great real estate investors by interviewing them and highlighting them and writing about them. So they loved it. And I got to know them. And that's how I got involved in the field. And, obviously there were some people that helped me along the way, gave me advice, gave me suggestions, but it's always about giving back initially and, putting all that effort in, giving back to others without expecting anything in return. So it's a lot of giving, and putting yourself out there before anything comes, back. There was a lot of that, and there still is a lot of that. You put yourself out there. There's so much time, so much effort. That's why I tell people that want to get involved in this business. They are like, wow, what you're doing looks so cool. I want to get involved as well. How do I do it? I'm like, you need to be willing to work so many hours without getting paid. And you have to enjoy what you're doing, because not necessarily are you going to make money initially. Everything's commission based here. I mean, not all, obviously not the fees. You have to be careful with SEC. You can't get paid based on commission. But I'm saying in general, it's all based on success. You're not getting a salary. So everything, even if you're a realtor, if you're a buyer, if you're a capital connector, everything is based on success. So you're not getting a salary. No one's paying you to work unless you're part of some other brokerage that's giving you just a salary or something different. So you have to be willing to put in that effort and time and energy before getting anything back.
So tell me about having relationships with high net worth people, because there are a lot of people out there that are in the position that you used to be in. And, I don't know, I want to do these deals, but I don't know anyone. I didn't come from money. I don't know anyone with money. I don't know doctors. I don't know dentists. Do these individuals, do they think differently? Do you have to talk to them differently? Have you gone to conferences that specifically target these high net worth people? How do you initiate those conversations with these high net worth people?
That's a good question. I'm just a natural yapper, so maybe I have no problem talking. And I like to share what I know, so maybe that comes naturally to me. I go to as many conferences as I can. I never, if it works with my schedule and my kid's schedule, then I try to go to wherever I can. You never know which connection you're going to pick up where. But the challenge I had getting in with real estate initially and talking to those professionals is that when I got involved in real estate, I didn't know anything about real estate, like nothing, like to the extent that when we bought our first house, I didn't even know what a mortgage was. My husband took care of the whole process. I had no idea. So once I committed to learning about real estate, I learned everything from scratch. But when you're going to speak to a commercial real estate investor, you have to know what you're talking about. You can't just, come out there and like wave your hands and expect them to throw money at you. You really have to know what you're saying. So that's the challenge. I had to learn everything really, really quickly in order to sound normal in front of them or to sound presentable. So that was something that I recommend people, like, just getting out there, learning about real estate, take an underwriting course, listen to podcasts, get acquainted with the terms.
And I imagine at this point, you've now created a really strong reputation for yourself where people know that, hey, go to Esther. If you've got capital to place and you're looking for a deal, go to Esther. Is that true?
I hope so.
Nice. So let's talk about, you had alluded to SEC regulations, and you have to be really careful with raising money, that you follow the rules and do it the right way. Do you have any advice for people that want to do it the right way but aren't sure what the rules are? Like, how did you learn the right way to raise money to make sure that you weren't doing anything in contrast to the SEC regulations?
Yeah, so initially I admit that I did not know what I was doing, and I kind of was upset with the sponsor that I was dealing with because he was a real estate professional. I was brand new, and I felt like I should have been told differently. But once I realized what to do, I started speaking to many investors and many attorneys. I spoke to about 14 SEC attorneys just to get their advice and experience and knowledge before I started my fund. The funny thing is that every one of them literally has a sort of a different take on how to go about raising and the rules. Like, there's a lot of gray area, which was very confusing to me. And no two attorneys say the same thing. And a lot of the SEC rules just don't make sense, but we got to follow them. But anyone that's looking to get out there, first of all, study the law and study the rules and just ask your attorney. Like, I sent that an email. I double checked it with my attorney to make sure that I'm allowed to send out that info or say that info. You have to be careful about what you post, what you say, depending on the type of fund you're raising. If it's a Reg D 506B versus a 506C, who you're allowed to raise money from, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you give us any quick tips or big red flags that either you see people violating often, or just really easy things that can be avoided, but you just have to know to avoid it?
I mean, there's a lot of people doing crazy things out there. But there are people that are just not using an attorney and aren't syndicating their deals properly and aren't filing stuff properly. So, I always recommend I don't know what they're doing. I always recommend just speak to an SEC attorney. It's different than a regular real estate transactional attorney. If you're syndicating money from limited partners that do not have a say in the deal, you need to speak to an SEC attorney.
Great advice. Yeah, I see. I mean, when you get on social media, there's some cringeworthy stuff with, clearly inexperienced people asking for investors on LinkedIn and Instagram, and hopefully someone in that person's network is telling that person that they, if they're clearly not doing things the right way and they need to stop.
It depends depends on their funds. Some funds are allowed to be spoken about. Some exemptions are not allowed to be spoken about. So it really depends on what type of exemption they filed. So it's very specific. So yes, make sure you're filing with an attorney.
Esther, if there are listeners listening to you right now and they're saying, man, I just don't have any connections. I just don't, it's hard for me to get out there. I'm not outgoing like you, but I have deals. What advice do you have for people? We've talked about putting yourself out there and sharing what you know. Do you have any other tactical advice for someone that's maybe more introverted and struggles to put themselves out there?
Well, the cool thing about the internet today's days is that you can write something without being in front of someone's face. So there are some people that are really, really active on LinkedIn, and you think that they'd be like hugely highly extroverted people. Usually it's not a word, sorry. Highly extroverted people. But when you meet them in person, they're so shy. So you can be a totally different person on social media these days, and a person be someone else. So, use whatever tools you have to your advantage. A lot of introverted people make very good underwriters. They're like more behind the scenes. They have deals. They partner with an extrovert, so they're like doing the legwork while the extrovert's all out there. There's so many ways that you could leverage your personality in your own way.
Great advice. Esther, we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation here. I have a couple more questions. The first one is, what's a big deal or a bad deal, a big mistake, or a most important learning that you've had that has shaped your investing today?
Well, I don't, like I said at the beginning, I did a lot of deals that I didn't get paid for, but I knew that may be a risk at the beginning. When I had started out, there was someone that I knew that had a lot of properties to offload, and I came and offered my services, and he refused to give me exclusivity or sign a contract. And I was still willing to try and work on it, knowing that he might mess me over and not pay me. But I was brand new and I wanted to get my feet wet. So I took the risk and I didn't get paid. I should be getting paid a lot for those deals, but I didn't. So that was something it's something that I don't regret, because I knew it was, I went in knowing exactly what the risks are, and it got me into the space. But it still hurt, it still stings. So that's, just something I put out there.
Yeah.
But you gotta take chances to get in the game. But what other things do I regret? I try not to live my life with regret. I think that everything is at the right time, and there's ups and downs now. The market's down, no doubt about it. We've took some hits. We lost some hard deposit money when the rates went up. So things hurt, things really hurt, but we did it with the best of our knowledge, with the best intentions, and I can't regret it, even though I don't like the situation that we're in some areas. It is what it is. It's a learning experience.
So from that experience with a big deal that you didn't get paid on, what's your takeaway from that? What'd you learn from that?
So now I'm very cautious about going into deals that people want me to represent. Like if you want me to represent a deal that you want to sell, I bring to the table that I have a large network and that I'm a hustler and I work hard. I get the deal. I can get a deal sold, but I do need some sort of exclusivity in order to sell a deal. I will not go into a deal right now without having some sort of contract before. I won't waste my time like I did back then.
Great advice. Esther, what is one mindset or mantra that has helped transform your investing?
Transform my investing or my way of living, or all of it?
Yeah, either. Any of it.
So yeah, I let go and let God. That's been a big one. Like, when I started and I would work on so many deals and things wouldn't work out, I'd initially get so upset. I'd get so burnt and be depressed for days. There were times that I worked on deals for months and they fell through. And it was hurtful. It was sad. But then I made the 5-minute rule where I can be upset about it for 5 minutes and then you got to move on. And also I realized that if a deal didn't work out through me, it wasn't meant to be mine. So I had to learn to let go and let God. God's in charge. I can only do a certain amount. And if it doesn't go through, it wasn't meant to be mine.
Love that. Great advice in there. Esther, if listeners want to connect with you, reach out to you, as if you need more people reaching out to you, where would you like to send people?
I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I would love more followers on Twitter. I stopped my account there for a while and I'm back on. So follow me on all platforms. I'm happy to help where I can. I'm very delayed in my messages at the current moment. I don't have a nanny at the moment. So I'm in between, so we're a little slow. But happy to help where I can. Reach out to me on any social media platform. And my website is estherreizes.com.
Esther, this has been a great conversation about your experience at Bigger Pockets and what it's like to raise capital right now. I know you've got a ton going on. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this or watching this. I sincerely appreciate you listening. Until next time, take care.